This episode is brought to you by the American Reptile and Plant Expo. It's Colorado's biggest reptile and plant show. Colorado natives host the All-American Reptile and Plant Expo on September 7th and 8th at Douglas County Fairgrounds. Shop oddities, terrariums, reptiles, amphibians, invertebrates, and plants from Reptile Basics, Arcadia, Pangea, and more. Tickets for the All-American Reptile and Plant Expo are available on Eventbrite now. Plus, use code CITY for 10% off. For more details, visit denverreptileshow.com. That's denverreptileshow.com. This episode is brought to you by the YMCA of Metro Denver. Discover a place where weightlifting is uplifting. The YMCA of Metro Denver is your spot for cardio and strength training, fitness classes, swimming pools, and programming for all ages. Have kids but still want to hit the gym? Check out the Supervised Adventure Zone. Because at the YMCA, family time and me time are both possible. Try the YMCA at Metro Denver for free in September. Get a 7-day trial membership anytime this month by going to denverymca.org/citycast to sign up. That's denverymca.org/citycast. Today on CityCast Denver, you get a ticket to Casa Bonita. You get a ticket to Casa Bonita. The Pink Palace is open to anyone, for real. But what will their big changes to Colorado's most famous restaurant mean for the workers and CB fanatics everywhere? Me and producer Paul Caroli dig into Matt and Trey's latest moves, plus the national hysteria around a supposed Venezuelan gang takeover in Aurora. Today is Wednesday, September 4th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Hey, Paul.
Hey, good morning, Bree.
Lots of news over the holiday weekend, am I right?
So much news. So much news. It was such a weird weekend. I mean, I was in DC. I was out of the city, and like this one story we're going to talk about became national news, and I was seeing it and it was like, oh my God, Denver matters right now. Holy cow.
Well, let's talk about that. We've been following this, the Tren de Aragua gang issue, for lack of a better term, for the last few weeks. But over the weekend, it exploded all over national media. Like, I read this hip hop blog Complex, and they cover like fashion and who's dating who in hip hop, and they covered it. And I was like,
what did they say about it?
I pulled up the headline. Let me find. Hold on.
I wonder if is there a hip hop connection? Because that part of this, the whole like the storytelling aspect of gang culture, like that has fascinated me from the beginning around this. I don't find it as like fun anymore. This story is no longer interesting in that way to me. Now it's just kind of like gross and political, and everybody seems scared and upset and mad at each other, and it's revealing a little bit of racism.
Yes, which we'll get into. The headline from Complex was Aurora police respond to videos of Venezuelan gang presence at apartment complex. They say Aurora police as if everyone that's reading Complex knows what they're talking about. It's very strange.
That's so weird.
It appeared on obviously Fox News. The New York Post was covering it. I mean, it was literally everywhere. But
can I read the New York Post headline? Because I think this was the thing that really popped.
Yes, please.
Brutal Venezuelan gang violence spills into quiet suburb from the sanctuary city next door, despite efforts to keep migrants out.
I can just like see the person like hammering their keyboard, writing that, thinking they're so quippy by all of those weird qualifiers they put in there, like sanctuary city versus quiet suburb.
Sanctuary.
Aurora, third biggest city in Colorado, not really a quiet suburb.
Yeah,
but
it's basically part of the city. It's a different administrative zone, but like culturally, it's all the one metro area.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's definitely not a quiet suburb by any means. But anyway, what was the latest? Like, what was everyone talking about?
Well, this has been going on for a few weeks. We've been seeing these rumors, all this like fear on social media, basically about a quote unquote Venezuelan gang that has quote unquote taken over several apartment buildings in Aurora. I think this really popped locally around the story with Fitzsimon's Place, which was like an apartment building that the city actually condemned, which was like an unprecedented move from the city of Aurora to condemn this building, which put all of these Venezuelan, Central American newcomer families out on the street. Very sad. But the landlords blamed this gang, Tren de Aragua, which had apparently taken over that building and several others. So that's what people were talking about for a few weeks. We talked about it on the show a few weeks ago. Last week, it really went wild after Fox 31, the local Fox affiliate, published a video showing 4 men, one of them armed with a very large machine gun, apparently forcing their way into an apartment, a nondescript apartment. Apparently, it was one of these buildings that this gang has taken over. And the video, according to Fox 31, was captured shortly before a shootout in the parking lot of that building.
What did you think about this video? I mean, because it was everywhere.
I don't know what to think about this video. I mean, it's security footage from a crime that happened, as far as I'm concerned. I think there's so much. I don't even know where to start with this. Like Venezuelan gang, I think is the key thing. Like, why does it matter that it's a Venezuelan gang? It's the most political thing. Like, if this was any other gang, and this is what we're going to talk about, Mayor Kaufman of Aurora and Mayor Johnston of Denver appeared on our friend Kyle Clark's show on 9 News last week. But they basically presented this united front that, like, yes, this is a gang. We do have some evidence that this gang is here, but we are approaching it the way we would any other gang, the way we do with gangs all the time. And Kaufman even confirmed that there's been arrests since the violent jewelry store robbery that was connected to Tren de Aragua a few weeks ago. And I guess even the head, the lead dude in this gang, whose name I guess is Jonardi Jose Pacheco Chirino, goes by Gaeta. He was arrested over the weekend. Denver Gazette reported this. So as all this hysteria is happening, the police are just doing the day-to-day work of trying to stop crime.
Yeah. I think the unfortunate part is like it's just getting intertwined with the newcomer conversation, which we've been having for a year and a half, I think, as folks from Venezuela have been coming to Colorado. And I feel like those things are just becoming interchangeable. Right?
Yeah.
Like they're like people are getting them it's like one story, one and the same. And what I found really interesting was Alfonso Espino, who we've had on the show to talk about issues in Globeville, showed up in this video for the Denver chapter of the Party for Socialism and Liberation on Instagram, directly addressing the folks that may have been impacted by this gang supposedly taking over these apartment complexes, right? And the folks that he talked to said that this is not what's happening at all. And they were like, no, our landlords are just like not taking care of the building. That's our real issue, which is what has been reported on quite a bit. The Fitzsimmons building in particular we were talking about is where folks were saying their trash wasn't getting picked up. When Alfonso talked to some of these people, they showed him receipts. Like, we paid rent to this company and they're not taking care of basic needs. And I feel like that and the gang part are just like all combined into one thing. And there's a lot of just like confusion over what's happening.
Well, I think I can peel apart a couple of layers for it,
okay,
which is
that would be
one is just the presidential election is happening.
Right.
And the migrant issue is a huge issue in the election. So earlier this year, Tren de Aragua first became a political football when a woman in Georgia was murdered near some college campus. Her name is Laken Riley. Very tragic. It turned out that the person who did it was connected to this gang in some way. This gang that has a relatively new gang that has popped up in Venezuela. So a bunch of Republicans in Congress called on the Biden administration to impose some sanctions on this gang. They've decided this gang is the problem, that, all of these newcomers, these migrants that are sweeping in, they brought along this gang with them. So it's a hugely political thing now. They're using this gang as like a way to illustrate their issues with the border, immigration at large.
Yes.
I think separately is another thing, is just a question that's come out of all of this. What does it mean to take over an apartment building?
That's a good question.
It's quite vague.
What does it mean?
It's quite vague. Because what are they collecting rent? Did they take over the leases? Are they paying tax? Like, what is this gang doing? Is there a warlord sitting in a penthouse somewhere? Did he order people with guns to secure the perimeters? What kind of taking over is actually happening? And I think that's still ambiguous. Because it sounds like, I mean, from Alfonso's video, that the people who live in these buildings are still paying rent to their landlords. They're just not getting the services that they're paying for. Like,
Right.
maybe there's gang members in these buildings. Maybe they're doing crime sometimes. But, like, taking over implies some kind of, like, loss of control or authority that's, again, just very political. It all strikes me as very political messaging.
Well, and also, so for instance, CBZ Management, who owns the Fitzsimmons Place building, repeated that rumor. They said Venezuelan gangs had taken over the building they were managing, but folks were still paying rent to CBZ Management. So there's so many players involved with who's spreading this information that I think it's...
Well, I think it started with them.
You do.
But Kaufman, the property management, and then one of the people, remember Megan Ulani Boyanton told us on the Renter show we did a couple of weeks ago, she said that one of the people who living in Fitzsimmons Place, they also said that a gang had taken over. But Mike Kaufman says in that interview on 9 News that we've been talking about, he said that Aurora PD is still able to go into these buildings. It's like, it's a more ambiguous situation. It's like there's a criminal element here, but it's people, it's people in living in poverty. It sounds like, these things happen in these situations, unfortunately.
Well, let's talk about Mayor Mike Kaufman and Denver Mayor Mike Johnson. You brought this up. They had both did this interview with Kyle Clark. Can you talk a little bit about how that went? I found this to be a very revealing interview.
Well, I want to know what you think about it, because what I took away was, like, on the show, we've got this kind of right from the beginning. Like, they just were downplaying it consistently. Like, this is not, they were saying this has been exaggerated. They were saying this, we're doing our, like, regular counter gang work. There have been arrests. It would be a shame for this gang to be, like, portrayed as representative of the newcomer and Venezuelan communities, because it is very much not. And so that's what I took away from the interview. What did you think?
I mean, I just thought that Mayor Johnston spoke a little bit more realistically and humanely, because he's really been on the front lines of dealing with the newcomer crisis in terms of housing folks and figuring out how to get systems in place to, get work permits expedited and all of these things. And Kaufman, to me, just seemed like he was like, talked a little bit about the gang part related to the police, but then kind of didn't have a lot to say about the actual issue at hand, versus where I saw him in an interview on, like, the local Fox affiliate, Fox 31, where he was saying that he thought the federal government was involved with dumping these people here and that they were working with nonprofits. And it was like this really...
That's interesting. Is he talking about just the newcomers generally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so it just was like, I just feel like I don't quite know. I don't know if I understand where Aurora's leadership is with this, especially because also they have that council person, Danielle Jurinsky, who's said a lot of things about Venezuelan migrants that we know are based in no actual, have been debunked, essentially. I'm confused with what Aurora's doing. I guess maybe the interview with Kyle was most revealing because they really did, like you said, talk about the gang context. And maybe that's the important part, is separating that from the newcomer conversation.
Yeah, that's key for sure. I think that was their main goal going into that interview. The other thing I thought was interesting was Kaufman revealed, just in passing, he talked about getting a text from Governor Polis about this whole situation. Polis, who has in the last couple of weeks become one of the main surrogates for the Harris-Walz campaign. He's been, swept up in the national politics as well. Just another sign of how political this is coming. Kaufman says that he got a text from Polis with concerns about the, quote, image issue around Tren de Aragua and Aurora being, quote, taken over.
What do you think that means?
I mean, it means it looks bad. It looks bad for Colorado,
Aurora.
for a Democrat state, for a Democrat city. I mean, Aurora is not, but Denver is, and it gets lumped together in people's minds. I think this is like being used by conservatives and Fox News to make a point about the border and about immigration, and that's what Polis is concerned about, I would guess.
I agree, and I think this ties back to what you were saying earlier, which is it's a presidential election year. That's what's making this more national news than maybe it would be in an off election year.
Yeah. Like, there's other gangs. There's other gangs that are doing crime all the time.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing we have to talk about related to this is the signs.
Sure.
Over the weekend, these signs appeared affixed to an RTD bus stop and a few stop signs that said things like, quote, caution, Kamala's illegals, with an image of people like running. And then I'm like, this is crazy to say out loud. One of them said, quote, blacks must sit at the back of the bus and Kamala's migrants sit at the front. And our friend Ashley that runs the Colfax Things account found the account of the sign maker. But what I also thought was interesting was immediately politicians of every level in Colorado were making statements disavowing these signs.
Yeah.
What do you think about the signs? What do you think how does that play into this conversation?
I mean, again, this is election year nonsense to me. I mean, I think the funny thing, not funny, sad. I mean, I don't know this guy, Sabo. I hadn't heard of this guy, this supposedly activist, calls himself an artist thing. I watched some of his Instagram videos since he was outed.
So bad.
It's bizarre. He's like, there are no artists in this state that have any courage. And I am the one that is making a statement here with these signs. And it's like, dude, this is vandalism.
And it's not even good vandalism.
You're putting things up that look like signs on official, like you're being very misleading. And I don't know. I mean, I guess you could make an argument that like this is art but I don't really want to talk about what's art in this context. I want to talk about like this guy trying to make a point and like, and then more so these officials also making a point, like, because at the press conference where all of city council, like everybody went out there onto Colfax and they went out and they condemned the signs. Everybody's against the signs. Yeah, look, me too. Horrible. Vandalism, racist, insensitive, very bad. But they were talking about the Kamala Harris campaign at the same time. I mean, I guess he made it about her because he put it on the sign, Kamala's migrants sit at the front. But like, this is so like, Trump and he's going to stop the gang from taking over Aurora, and Kamala, she's just going to be, nice. We're going to do nice things for newcomers and migrants. Like, whoa, this is so weird. This is so weird, and it has so little to do with these people living in destitute situations in the apartment buildings. Like, who's got an idea for them? Who's got a plan for them?
I just want to say one thing when you talked about his artist statements kind of things, because I was looking through his Instagram too, and it was like very funny to me because he's kind of acting the way I see some artists act when they don't feel like they're getting enough recognition, which I think is really funny.
Oh, really? That's funny.
He said he had his latest post on Instagram as of this recording was he claimed Colorado was, quote, lacking creative thinkers and that artists here are either psychologically wounded or they don't understand that expressionism has been no longer. It's like it was just this whole screed about people not being good artists. And then but then he goes on to talk about Clifford Still, the only Denver artist that he can think of, which, by the way, Clifford Still's not a Denver artist. We have an amazing museum here devoted to him for other reasons, but he is not a Denver artist. But he said Clifford Still basically paints cow hides, and that's our art scene. That's how he sums it up. And then he goes on to say that he's going to move to Texas or California because the artists here are just big wussies.
Yeah.
And I was like, you and everybody else, bro, who's like, Denver's art scene sucks. I'm going somewhere where it's cool. And I was like, is that what this is really about? Because there's that happening, the guy that's making the signs, and then there's the political response to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, did we blow this man out of proportion and give him a lot of space he didn't really need? Because it seems like he is he's riding this wave. He's loving it.
I don't know if he's going to benefit from this. I'm not sure he's going to get anything out of it. I think this is a bad thing for him.
I'd be curious. I don't know. I didn't look. The thing I should have looked at is like his numbers, his like follower numbers, and follow them and see. That's really how you can tell. But I don't know. I just saw an artist having a little hissy fit on Instagram. Yeah,
I watched that video too, and at the end he was like, "I'm going to move to Texas and Florida," but Texas and Florida are both really hot. It's like, okay, so I guess the art scene here is not so bad.
This episode is brought to you by the Colfax Avenue Business Improvement District. Come on down to Denver's most iconic street, Saturday, September 7th for the 2024 Colfax Crawl. This bar crawl is like none other, with 5 unique tracks to suit your taste. Beer lovers, dive bars, mocktails, queer bars, and wine and cocktails. Enjoy exclusive specials at popular spots like Bar Max, Brews Off Backs, The Squire, the newly opened Champagne Tiger, and more. I can't wait to go to Champagne Tiger, to be honest with you. What's their theme? Bougie Ratchet? Me. If there's a sober version of Bougie and Ratchet, it's me. Gather your crew and experience Denver's nightlife like never before. Because this is more than a bar crawl. It's a Colfax adventure. This event is poppin', so be sure to secure your spot before it sells out. Get your tickets now at multipass.com/ColfaxCrawl2024. That's multipass.com/ColfaxCrawl2024.
Hi, this is David, the CEO of CityCast. Do you ever find yourself holding back on travel because you're afraid of a language gap? Well, mind the gap no longer, as long as you have Babbel. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app. Its 10 minutes lessons are quick and handcrafted to get you talking your new language in 3 weeks. So I was reminded in the Olympics how much I love French. I had spoken French as a kid, but it has deteriorated to nothing. But I thought I would love to take a trip back to France with my girlfriend, but I'm embarrassed because my French is at 0. And I thought, why not get on Babbel and revive my French? And it's been a joy for the past few weeks. I'd forgotten everything. I'd forgotten plurals. I'd forgotten articles, vocabulary. Mostly I'd just forgotten how to speak and how to listen. And Babbel has me back on track with lots of speaking and lots of listening, because that's how you get better at a language. So I've been working on time, for example, and there's this way in French where when you say 2:45, you don't say 2:45, you say 3 o'clock minus 15. So, je rentre à 3h moins le quart. I'm coming back at 2:45. Anyway, it's so much fun to speak. And don't take my word for it. There's studies from Yale, from Michigan State University that prove that Babbel works. So here's a special limited time deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Let's move on to our next topic. The other huge news that dropped over the weekend.
Massive.
What?
Go for it.
Okay, so Casa Bonita announced that starting September 16th, anyone can make a reservation. Anyone. Up until now, as we know, you had to put your email on this list, which we learned at one point was over 600,000 emails long, and wait for an invitation to get a reservation. We have gotten those ourselves, and we have gone. But
yes,
a
how
lot
many times
of people,
have you gone?
I've only gone like
But how many though? How many though? Exactly.
4
how many?
times.
Only 4?
And I just got another invite right before they announced this.
Really? I have a friend who was the same. She got one finally and she was really excited, and then like this came up and she was like, "Oh God, what the hell? Waited all this time for this?"
Well, and I'm curious what it's going to look like when you actually can go on to make a reservation. I mean, is it going to be months long? How is this going to work?
I mean, I think I know as recently as like March, they told the Denver Post that there were like 300,000 people on the email list still that hadn't been contacted. So I don't know. It seemed like they were waiting for that list to dwindle so the reservation system wouldn't be totally overwhelmed to make this switch. But then we also know that they were in this soft opening phase since 2023 when they launched the email list at all and started letting people in. And like they had been kind of strategic about like, we're going to have a night where it's families. We're going to have a night where it's all like locals. We're going to have a night where it's all, like they were testing out different ways. And they definitely changed some things over the course of this soft opening. And that's what I'm interested in I'm not here as a super fan. As longtime listeners know, I've been establishing a critical distance from Casa Bonita.
You have. And I have unabashedly not.
Not even in the slightest. Yes.
Nope.
So I don't know. What should we talk about? Oh, the restaurant thing. Like they're opening as a traditional dining experience.
I have to say,
this was in the Denver Post. What did you think about that?
that scared the crap out of me.
Really?
I mean, I love the line. We've talked about this so much. I mean, we had that great interview with Professor Dave Thomas, the professor of fun, about what makes Casa Bonita so magical as an experience. And I think the line was part of that, right? It's like the anticipation. And if they don't have that, and I think our producer, Lizzie Goldsmith, experienced that going straight to the table. And she told me that, and like my brain like couldn't comprehend what you just don't do the line. So they're not going to do the line, I guess. They're just going to get seated.
You're going to seat, you're going to order from a server, you're going to get your check at the end of the dinner, and you're going to pay. And then crucially, I think you're going to tip.
You do.
Do you remember a year ago, they announced, there was big news. They said, no tipping at Casa Bonita. Everybody's getting paid $30 an hour, front of house, back of house, everybody. No tipping anymore. This is our current plan for how Casa Bonita is going to work. Now, I went to the Casa Bonita job board. You can see on there, they have abandoned this completely. Right now, what they're offering for table attendance, the listed wage is $28 an hour. So I think that's probably the server. And the dishwasher rate is $18 an hour.
Really?
Yes.
So
this is a tipping story. This is what's happened with Casa Bonita. They tried to do this, like, do the old model, and they've completely reverted back to the dominant restaurant model where servers have the opportunity to make tips.
And tipping psychos like me who just like can't not tip, just cannot not tip people. I love to tip. I worked in the service industry. It feels wrong to not tip. Going there after that change, I remember having conversations with several servers about it. Can I tip you? And it was a very literally under the table, like, you can, but you need to give it to me, and it needs to be in cash because it can't be left on the table, and there is no way to tip me on a credit card. So I won't not accept it, and I'm not telling you have to give me a tip, but I would, I want to say that they weren't putting it on me to tip them. They were trying to give it to me as diplomatically as possible. I can accept a tip, but these are the weird rules. And they had a sign on the way out that says we are a no tipping facility. Which
kind of makes sense, because they have all these other people that do service there. Like they have the performers, they have the back of house people, the cooks. Like it's not a traditional restaurant, but so they've had to navigate like the most complicated issue in dining right now is tipping and all the changes around the norms of tipping, but they're doing it in this like very unique space. And I guess this is what they think is going to be the most, sustainable and profitable in the long run.
Well, and we heard a lot. I mean, that was kind of, I think, the outcry from some of these folks who were I think the issue initially when they announced the no tipping thing was some folks who worked there felt, well, when I signed on to this job, this is the kind of thing I signed on for, which was a tipped job.
Yes.
And then you kind of flip the script once I got there. And if you've worked in the service industry, a tipped position versus a hourly position are very different.
Sure.
Like, you know what I mean? You take a gamble when you're a tipped employee.
You might be able to make a lot more. You might be able to make less, depending on the day, depending on the night.
Yeah, and I feel like we talked to our friends at the 3 Stars podcast. Maybe it was Brad Kaplan talking about some of these folks left really high-end restaurant jobs as, bartenders because they knew the Casa Bonita business was going to be so bananas. Of course I'm going to take this job. And then they find out, oh, wait, you're only getting $30 an hour. Well, I was making $150 an hour as a tipped employee at my old restaurant. So yeah, I'm very curious. That's a really great, astute observation, Paul. And I'll be very curious once we get back in there what the experience is.
I think the other thing to watch is the conversation around minimum wage in Lakewood. Because here in Denver, it keeps going up. We passed a new law recently after the state allowed municipalities to raise their own minimum wage. Denver's been on the forefront, raising it quite a lot. And restaurateurs are pushing back. There's a whole nother conversation to have around that, but I would be watching that around Lakewood. If I know there's a lot of listeners out there who are just like want the best for Casa Bonita and want it to last. These are the things that matter. Are they going to be able to attract servers that do a great job? Performers that are invested in, that see this as a platform for a future career, and chefs and talented back of house people that maybe want to work with for Adana Rodriguez, but maybe just want a good job.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point because it is such an interesting employer. It is unlike anything else in the state. Like you said, they have all of these different positions. So I will be curious to watch that. 2 other things we need to talk about before we move on. One, the founders email. You got the founders email.
Oh, yeah.
So
I signed up immediately. I was sitting at a bus stop in Washington, D.C., and I was like, oh, my God. Yes, I do want to be a founder of Casa Bonita.
So if you were on the email list when they made this announcement, you also got this email that said you are a founding member of Casa Bonita, and you can fill this little form out and you get special discounts and early opportunities on reservations. But I think the biggest perk to you and me was you get a little credit card that looks like a American Express black card that says founders.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. They say it's in the mail. We'll see when they actually get that to me sometime in the next 18 months.
Wait.
But I am looking forward to it.
The other aspect of this is the trailer has been circulating. The movie is getting out there, Casa Bonita, Mi Amor. And I have to say, as that has gone around, I thought they can't put this movie out and not allow people to make reservations there. This was all strategically planned. So I can't wait to see the movie. But I also just can't wait to see what this next phase of Casa Bonita looks like.
Yeah, they're friggin' geniuses. These guys,
they know what they're doing.
They went to Hollywood. They learned all the tricks. They came back here. They brought talented people back here. This is such a success story for Denver, the whole metro area, the whole state. It's so obvious why people are so excited about it. But so the way they rolled out this documentary was, and I read some details in the Post, they initially were just making it about Matt and Trey themselves. But then when they were filming Casa Bonita, the guy who made it was like, oh, clearly this is a Casa Bonita story. So they made this documentary. They played it at Tribeca earlier in the year. I sent an interview request for the director, denied. Not interested. Not until they can do local screenings. So then I saw that they were planning on doing local screenings last week. I re-upped my request. And then between my email and them getting back to me, the email about reservations opening went out. And I was like, it's all coming into place. They have engineered a moment here where, and next weekend, I already bought my tickets. Alamo Draft House, Sloan's Lake, the documentary screening for 4 days before it goes to a bunch of different cities.
Oh.
Did you get yours? You should go.
No, maybe I should do that for my birthday. I mean, this is really the best birthday present I could ever ask for.
Have you seen the
Casa
trailer?
Bonita. Yes, I watched it 3 times.
I know. It was so nice. I didn't realize that Trey didn't care about it as much as Matt, or Matt didn't care about it as much as Trey. That was kind of like, oh.
You could see that in the trailer where he was just like, ugh. And Trey was like, how could I not buy Disneyland? I could not buy it. And Matt was like, yeah, I guess we got to do this. And then there's that part where Trey says I guess I better go make another TV show or something because it cost them so much money. But I think they're going to make it back $40 million on an initial $2 million purchase, but I think they're going to make it back in spades. They're going to be fine.
I mean, we've talked about the IP potential. We're going to see a South Park Casa Bonita movie at some point.
And I can't wait. I cannot wait. I hope it's 3D or immersive or something. Sounds amazing. Well, Paul, hopefully by this time next week, we will have seen the Casa Bonita movie and we'll know more. But until then, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Bree. See you next time.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Aurora City Council member Danielle Jurinsky about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See ya! It's the short form video wave that they were trying to pivot all people to 10 years ago. Oh, so bleak. Okay.